First of all, thank you and welcome to our first Small Business Entrepreneurship Workshop. We are very excited to have you all here. We are going to have a semester full of these events, and they eventually all lead up to our Innovation Challenge, which is sponsored by Credit Union West, our wonderful partner that you're going to hear from in just a minute. So behind that is, if you have a business you want to start, if there is a plan that you have, a dream that you have started to think about, this is the opportunity for you to take those steps and work in a direction towards that. We're going to have these workshops where you're going to hear from some phenomenal women today and men some other days, but we have Gabriella and Megan, and I'm going to go by Gabby, even though I almost forgot because you got full name on there again. They're going to be sharing some insight about how they're doing things, how they've taken their steps. We're also going to hear from two women here in person as soon as they get here about how they've overcome fear, nervousness, inexperience to stand in front of a room full of people and share their passion, share their dreams. With that, we couldn't do this without the supporters we've had, and we've got two supporters, an organization called NACE, which is the National Association of Community College Entrepreneurs, and Credit Union West. Credit Union West is going to open up their own office here on the business building, and they're going to be here to give you all guidance. And I'm going to bring up Maria and Todd to share a little bit about what they do, what Credit Union West does, and give you a sneak peek of what's going to happen in 3 weeks. Three weeks, yeah. So we'll be back here in 3 weeks to talk money, and these are the two that are going to tell you all about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. This is the start of a great, adventure. I always tell everyone it's an adventure, but it's really what we make it with it, what the outcome's going to be. But anyway, I'm Maria with Credit Union West. I am the Community Impact and Business Development Specialist or Manager for two specialists that I have in my team. And one of the great privileges that I have is to do financial education. We have everything from Banking 101, which is basic banking. We then go into budgeting strategies. Then we talk about credit, and then identity theft. Those are the main top 4 topics that we go around town, and we're very fortunate that we have a lot of partners with K through 12. We recently had a program with the city of Glendale where we probably was 12 schools, if I remember correctly, over 1,100 students. They were all 7th, 8th graders. Once they completed that course, they would have a certificate, and then we would welcome them to come into the branches to set up their accounts with their parents. The city would give them an initial deposit, so it was a really great program. Turned out really good. But we've also talked to Peoria, which one is it? Pendergast, Peoria. We're right now talking to Littleton. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Littleton Elementary. So I told them about the basic 4 programs that we have for Basic Banking 101, budgeting, and all of that. And they said, that's great, but these kids want to learn about business. And this is K through 8. And they would like for us to come in and talk to them about business plans. And what do they need to open up a business account? And should they be a sole proprietor, an LLC, or a corporation? This is at an elementary school, so I was like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, this is a business school. So here we are at a college, and we're going to be doing that same program that we're going to present at Littleton with you all. And what it is again, from the very basics, we were going to go into credit, because as a business, and Todd will touch on this on the different services we have, but you're going to need to know, what does my credit look like? So we'll be able to have that conversation. Then we're going to go into, what does it take for me to open an account? Do I want to be a sole proprietor or an LLC? And I think this is what Brent already covers with you all. But we're just going to give you, the same information, just a little bit more broader. And then we're going to also talk about how do I complete a business plan. If I go to a bank or a credit union, what do they need from me? So that's what we're going to be discussing in about 3 weeks is when it'll be our turn to have the program with all of you. The other thing that we want to make sure is that you're all aware, we talk in big rooms like this, so a lot of times it's hard to ask questions. I may not feel comfortable asking a question. I'll just wait till after the class, but amazing partnership with Glendale Community College that we are going to have that office here. So just make an appointment or stop in because we are going to schedule a day where we'll be there all day or during the times that we're allowed. And come on into the office. If you're like, well, I want to make sure that you're available and it's just me, I want a one-on-one, that's why we're going to have that office here. So you can feel comfortable, talk to us, let us know how we can be of service. And so that's a little bit what we're going to be discussing in about 3 weeks. And then Todd is our business service specialist, and he's the one that knows all about products and services at Credit Union West. So quick introduction. There you go.
All right. How you guys doing? Good. All right. Well, it's exciting to see so many people out here that have the idea of starting their own business or having their own business. It's a wonderful thing in the United States of America where you have the privilege to do that and to give that a shot. It's all part of that pursuit of happiness, right? So anyway, so where I come in at, I would be one of the guys at our Credit Union West, who would assist you in opening up your business account. That would consist of at least a savings account and then obviously a checking account added to that. And then we've recently rolled out some new products such as business credit cards over the last few months. And as your business grows, then maybe one of these days, if you have a need, you can apply for one of our business lines of credit. And then for bigger things, we even have business loans now. So we're moving, we're growing, and it's exciting to see, again, so many of you people that are wanting to start your own business, and I wish you all the best of luck, and hopefully we'll be here to assist you in that on the banking side.
All right. I'll just share real quick. So I just have some stadium bags over here. If you ever go to any concert or baseball base or whatever, they want those clear bags. So I had a few in my vehicle. I brought them over for you all. If I run out and you need some more, I'll bring some more next time. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Todd. Everybody. And with that, Caitlin and Genevieve, please, we'll let you get up and figure out how to get comfortable in these chairs. You each have a microphone. Perfect. Thank you. And while to get situated here, again, reintroduce up on our screen. It's nice they got their names there so we know who it is the entire day. We have Megan and Gabby. We should get you all nameplates. So on the left, we have Caitlin. On my left, your right. And then we have Genevieve closer to me. So our four speakers are all connected in some way, shape, or form to the Miss Arizona pageant. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell their specific correlation to the pageant. But what I found out, for those of you that don't know, I was lucky enough because Caitlin somehow convinced me to do this. I got to be a judge in the fall. And it was an amazing, eye-opening thing because saw women at the Miss Arizona level and also at the teen level get up in front of 5 strangers, answer questions they didn't know, and did it with such calmness and such clarity. I sat there and said, they've got a skill they can teach people. Y'all are amazing when it comes to the ability to present your dreams, your passions, what's important. So that is going to be a big focus of today, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to ask them a lot of questions. But let's start first with introductions, and we'll start in the room. We'll start with Genevieve, then go to Caitlin, and up to the screen. So tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Hi, my name is Genevieve. I am currently Miss Scottsdale, and I am the founder of the Will Foundation, which is a nonprofit geared towards creating mentorship networks and scholarships for first-generation female law students.
Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin Martin. I go by Caitlin Nicole. I am the founder of multiple organizations, most notably Caitlin Nicole Makeup. So I'm a full service pageant headshot photographer, spray tan, hair and makeup service. And I operate a team doing that, but I'm also a first year law student. And I also provide interview paperwork and onstage question development to our Miss Valley of the Sun title holders like Megan and Genevieve and once upon a time, Gabby.
A lot of law there. Okay, Gabby, go ahead. Let us know a little bit about you.
Yes, good to see you all. So brief background, I am actually retired now from Miss America. I was competing, but I got married. So I competed in the Miss America organization for 5 years. Amazing experience, would highly recommend if you have not ever looked into competing. And for my professional background, I actually work in business consulting at Cardone Ventures. I'm an operations advisor. But I, on the side, run an organization called She's Got Moxie, which provides women personal, professional, and financial coaching.
Amazing. Hello, everybody. My name is Megan Campbell or Megan Campbell Smith. I go by both. I am the current Miss Glendale 2026, so very fitting to be here speaking to you all. Super exciting. I've been involved in the Miss America organization since I was 15 years old, so been here for a minute, but I've learned so much now, so much that I also work at Cardone Ventures in business consulting as a marketing manager. So that's what I do professionally and through Miss America.
I feel like the two of you should be in the same office. One camera, but
She's
hey.
working from home, but I am in the office today.
Okay. Well, let's go real quick. And I'll go around the room, or you guys can just jump in. And I think, Caitlin, weren't you in the pageant also at some time?
I was, yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, you left that out in your...
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So I competed for only 2 years in the Miss America opportunity. I was Miss Gilbert in 2019 and then Miss Chandler both 2020 and 21 because that was a COVID year. And then I had a brief stint in the USA organization as well. So I got to see both sides. But I am fully retired, almost 30 now. So it's a long time ago.
Well, let's bounce off of that. You all have won the crown, worn the sash. What is one specific skill you learned on stage that you've used in work? Share a skill that's transferred from the competition to the workplace.
I'm happy to go first. So I have worked as a paralegal for the last 6 years, but within that, I have been given the unique opportunity to also handle cases on behalf of our clients in construction law, which I know is a little bit funny when you look at me. There's not very many women that want to go into construction law, let alone who actually have gotten to try cases for it. And so the biggest thing that I have gotten to learn from pageants is oral advocacy, being able to effectively and concisely represent matters, whether it's advocating on behalf of a client or for a cause like our community service initiatives through the pageant, to a room full of people who are judging you.
I'll piggyback off of Caitlin onto oral advocacy, not only advocating for those around you, but learning how to advocate for yourself and enter the room with confidence and compose yourself in front of whether it's large groups or small groups, especially as a woman in the legal field. It can be hard sometimes being the first woman or the only woman in that room. So learning to stay calm, stay positive, and hold your power.
I'll go ahead and take it next. For me, I would say it's the ability to pivot. And what I mean by that is, if you're not familiar with Miss America, there's a few phases of competitions. We have a private interview, we have an onstage question, which you don't know beforehand. You go on stage, you're in front of the entire audience, and then they give you a question that you need to answer in ideally 30 seconds or less. And then there's a talent portion in evening gown and fitness. But with onstage question, because you're not prepared for it, or sorry, you don't know what the question is going to be, you are prepared for it. You don't know the question beforehand. You have to be able to adapt in the moment to whatever question you're given. And for me and my own working environment, my boss loves to throw curveballs. He loves to give people the opportunity to try something new. And so there have been many times where I was asked to lead a workshop for work or a session that I needed to teach a group of clients. And it was actually the skill set of doing the onstage question and preparing for that that made me able to pivot so quickly. So that was huge for me in my career.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that has been said. I think we all agree with each other here. I think just to add something new to the table, the biggest thing that I learned, especially as I began my professional career and even was interviewing while I was in college for different smaller jobs, different internships, opportunities, just things like that. The biggest thing that I took away from it was learning how to speak on behalf of an organization that's so much bigger than yourself. I think, yes, we learn how to advocate for ourselves. Yes, we learn how to advocate for our serve initiatives, but it's another thing to actually speak and be an extension of a nationwide brand. And that's something I had experience with for me personally when I started at 15 years old that I would have never known how to do or had experience with until I got my first job. So I think it just really kind of was a launch pad for learning how to do that. And now, especially as someone who works at a business consulting agency, so many of our core concepts that we have here at Cardone Ventures and my company specifically, I am literally just feeding through myself into our clients every single day. And it's something I've worked in a couple different jobs now, but really that's been consistent across every different position that I've had in every different industry that I've worked in, is just being able to speak for an organization larger than yourself and represent the brand through everything that you do and kind of weave in your personal messaging to it too.
Okay, thank you very much. And Gabby, I'm going to pick on you because I know this about you and I'm not sure anyone else. You are a community college graduate as well as Western New Mexico. Who else is? Oh, super. We got three. Oh, fantastic. So community college students go through a lot that your typical four-year students don't go through. It's a mostly juggling work, life, and things that we don't see at ASU, U of A, GCU quite in the same breath. So can you give an example of a time that you truly faced a challenge and were able to work your way through it, succeed, use the skills maybe that you've learned in the Miss Arizona pageants to get you forward?
How much time do we have?
Till 2:30, I think is what, but no.
So many, but I think the one that really stands out to me, going to a community college, you hit the nail on the head. I was working all the time. I needed to pay my bills. I was living on my own. And then I was simultaneously trying to build the real skill sets that I needed for my career. And so in a lot of ways, what I was doing for work, because I was at a restaurant, I needed to figure out, how do I transfer this to corporate skill sets? And so through that, it made me get creative, and I would look for different certifications that would actually build my resume for my professional career as well as Miss America, because your resume does matter within Miss America. You present a resume to the judges. And so, I really had to find opportunity in a time and place where I didn't have the paper that I needed to get the job that was my ultimate goal. And I think that ability to adapt despite where you're at in life was something that was really important for me. And so I would tell you, if there's a skill that you could learn, and I hope it continues to come up as a common theme here, it's adaptability, because I really do think that will get you so much further in your career when you're willing to roll with the punches. So for me, I think that's probably one of the most important transferable skills that I took.
Okay, and both of you raised your hands, so please share something from your community college experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started off as an education major. I was a STEM education major, and I have a litany of degrees now, but graduated from community college with a STEM education degree, and my student teaching experience, because at Chandler Gilbert Community College, their educators actually have to do a full internship like you would at ASU when you're going to be an educator, was the reason why I dropped out of school. So I dropped out of school for 4 years while I tried to figure out what I wanted to do from 2016 to 2020. And I share that story because I now have 3 degrees and I'm in law school. And if it weren't for that experience and taking that time off to really focus on myself and my business and working, I don't think I would be where I am, because that life experience is so important. I worked the entire time. I was in community college taking 26 credit hours a semester on top of working full-time, on top of owning 2 businesses, and on top of founding a nonprofit. And a lot of people hear that and they're like, did you sleep? And the answer is no, and I still don't. And I think the most important thing to take away from that is that your failures turn you into a success, and your successes are preceded by failure or things that cause you to have to pivot. And so going off of Gabby's point about adaptability, you as community college students, whether you choose to go to a 4-year university after or not, are in such a unique position in the sense that so many students, when they are graduating and going into professional fields, don't have professional experience, they don't have life experience, they don't have learned experience, they just have academia experience. And that life experience is going to be what helps you connect with people in the room, regardless of who they are or where they're from, or if they were an academic person or not.
So I graduated high school when I was 16, and my parents did not want me to move away to a 4-year university at 16. I don't know whose parents would. And so my only option was the community college in town so I could stay at home. And honestly, the biggest takeaway I have from my community college experience is take advantage of the resources that are provided to you. There is a much smaller population, so there are so many opportunities provided to you that you might not get at a larger institution. So I was able to start the first ever student body government at my community college because I was one of 6 people who ran, and then that ended up letting me run for student body at the larger institution. I ended up going to Arizona State, where I graduated with my bachelor's. So take advantage of the different opportunities afforded to you.
That is good stuff, and good teachers too at community colleges. Okay, what I next want to kind of go into is the idea of resumes and experience being a little bit light possibly as a college student. How do you, how important was it for you to learn soft skills like communication and dealing with people and that poise and that comfort? And how do you translate experiences you had? I know some of you have had jobs not as glamorous as the jobs you have today, but how did you describe what you were doing to get the next better job? So we'll start with Megan, because you missed the last one.
I was going to say I can start since I did not answer the last question, although I did do dual enrollment in high school, so I did have experience a little bit in a community college, but I don't know if that counts here. But no, I would say back to Genevieve's point originally of just the key takeaways from this, learning how to advocate for yourself and make things sound really important was really hard, because I think on a resume, when I first was going to fill mine out, whether it was within the world of pageantry or professionally, I thought it was really easy just to list the objective duties and roles and responsibilities of those roles on my resume, but really coming up with the soft skills that I actually did within that. I think Gabby said it really well earlier as well when she was working at a restaurant and still trying to find ways to connect it to her professional life, and seeing the bigger picture when you're writing these things out and showing and demonstrating that you've already had experience to communication. If you worked at a restaurant, that's amazing customer service. And you're already dealing with objections, you're dealing with communication gaps and barriers literally all day. So learning how to pivot, how to move quickly on your feet, things like that are skills that you're learning, but just actually articulating that was something that I never really was faced with until I had to go to build my first resume. So I absolutely think that just learning how to advocate for yourself and find those soft skills on a resume, even when you don't have a ton of outright experience, is super important on the professional side. And then from the pageantry side, one thing I learned with that is that I got my first job because of the skills that I learned through Miss America. And I outright put that on my resume. But when I was transitioning from high school, even just my first, it was a retail job. It wasn't even a corporate salary job by any means. I was working at a jewelry store, and they required a couple years of retail experience, but just being able to use and leverage those outside of work experiences that I didn't have a necessary job title for. So even if, you've never been involved in Miss America, I still think that's a great example of pulling on what you have. So if you were a team leader, if you were in student government in high school, if you're on student government now, to Genevieve's point, in college, little things like that you're involved with, even just being a part of this business summit and coming to these events too, I think is great leadership experience that you can leverage beyond just a job title. So learning how to implement those in and actually leverage those to the best of your ability and be able to speak to them too. When they ask you a question about, how do you handle stress? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Things like that. And just being able to pull from real world experiences of how you've been able to pivot and show them those skills beyond just hard skills and objective things on a resume.
Let's turn that back on. Anyone else have any thoughts on the soft skills or?
I'm happy to share something on this. I know you were asking what is the most important soft skill we develop, but I do just want to make a call out that I think it's really important as you're building your resume and you're trying to tailor your experience for the job or role you're applying for. Don't be rigid, because every job, every title is going to have different expectations. There are going to be different responsibilities that you hold, and you need to be able to, again, adapt your experience to what it is that they're looking for. So to be able to do that is really important. But for me, I would say probably the most important that I've continued to use is executive presence. I developed that through Miss America because I was speaking on stages, I was in small groups, I was leading meetings. And when you think about executive presence, what is that? It's the ability to be taken seriously when you walk in a room. It's the ability to influence others to action. And that's so important in a professional environment, because if you ever want to move into a leadership role and continue progressing at your company, you have to be able to get other people to take you seriously. And I would argue, before you ever get that job in the interview room, having that executive presence is the differentiator that makes them say, I want to pick this person to work at the company. So if you can really develop executive presence, I think it's a great soft skill to lean into really throughout the life cycle of your career.
Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of what Gabby and Megan said, and I'm going to ask you two a different question. Many times when you're trying to start a company or even get hired at a business, there are qualifications that are put out there that you don't have. How do you use those soft skills, your passion, your dreams to overcome the shortcomings?
You want me to go first? I'll go first. So my first job at the law firm that I'm currently at, I applied to be a paralegal, and I had not gotten my paralegal certificate, which in Arizona you don't have to be a paralegal. But on top of that, they actually called me and they were like, you are qualified to be our receptionist. And I was like, well, that's not true. And I said to them on the phone, take me in for an interview and I'm going to show you exactly why that isn't the case. And they did. And I spent an hour and a half in a room with 6 lawyers who had no idea who I was and just saw on my resume that I was Miss Gilbert at the time, competing in pageants, right? Owned these businesses, whatever. And they were like, so what? Why should we hire you? Why are you better than, somebody that can sit and answer phones to be advocating on behalf of clients and essentially being a mini lawyer at our firm? And I spent that hour and a half convincing these lawyers why they needed to hire me, right? The work that I would put in, the hours that I would spend, the grit that I had learned through pageantry, right? Because you often enter pageants as an adult if you've not done them as a teen or as a kiddo, and you're kind of at a disadvantage a little bit because you're with girls that have already developed these strong oral advocacy skills that aren't afraid to be on stage and talk to people, right? And they're beautiful on top of all of that. And in a society that looks at people, right, and your first impression matters, it's really intimidating. And I wasn't intimidated at that point. I'm like, I've done all of this before, I can do this again. And they took a chance and they said, you get a 30-day probationary period, and if at any point during that time we just think you're not cut out for it, we're gonna fire you. And after 15 days, they came to me and they said, you've already proved us wrong, because I was at the office long after my time needed to be done, and way earlier than any of my other peers. And they gave me my job offer that I'm currently in today, and Genevieve is now literally coming on to be one of my assistants, because the goal is that I'm going to be coming back to that firm as an attorney and make partner very, very young. So all of that to say that the way you show up, to Gabby's point, matters, right? Yes, it matters what you put on that resume, but it's that confidence, that ability to be able to look at people who are far more advanced in their fields than you are and say, I deserve a seat at this table, and I believe it. Give me a chance and take a chance on me, because I would rather, as a person that employs people in multiple facets, right, whether it's my own business or now at this law firm, and I'm helping with hiring and forming that process, pick somebody that doesn't have experience in the field that they're hiring for because they show me that they're hungry, than somebody who walks in and says, well, I know it all. I've done it before, right? I've done this. I know what I'm doing. Because chances are you're going to be rigid, to Gabby's point. You're not going to be willing to learn. And if I want you to do it a different way, you're probably not going to.
Kind of piggybacking off of Gabby's point of executive presence, when I was 16, I went to law firms at 16 years old saying I wanted to work at a law firm. I was carrying around a paper resume. I had never had a full-time job before, and I was begging for a chance. And if I didn't walk into a law firm with the executive presence saying, I want this job, I know I can do it, just give me the chance, then I would not have had the opportunity I did then. I had a lawyer, thankfully, who did give me the chance, and I worked full-time as a paralegal from 16 to now at Caitlin's law firm, hopefully next week. And so I've always learned that you have 30 seconds of courage. You just go in, give that 30 seconds of courage, give it all you've got, and the worst that could happen is they say no. Then you move on, you move to the next thing. And then also going back to adaptability, employers want to see that you can adapt to different changes within the organization. They want to see that you can adapt to the stress that might come with every organization that there is, because something's going to change. Everything's going to progress. So those soft skills end up really important. It was actually at another event that I came to here where the two speakers were talking about how they look for soft skills when they are looking for new employees for their companies, because you can't really learn soft skills like you can learn how to get a new degree or get a new certification. They want to see that you want the job. They want to see that you can adapt to the different challenges that come with it. They want to see that you are respectful and kind and that you want to be there.
We're going to give Genevieve an honorary degree. She's been here so many times. The 30 seconds, you all have brought it up a couple of times. And here's my question. We all have heard of the term elevator pitch and so forth. How much do you practice what you're going to say to describe who you are and what you are? I don't know. Who wants to go first?
I can go.
Okay.
I have it written on my mirror. So every morning it's on a sticky note to the right of my mirror, and I have my daily affirmation basically saying I'm going to show up with warmth and respect and positivity, so that way people want to talk to me and they want to hear my elevator pitch. And then I have the elevator pitch right under it, so that way I remember it and I embody it, so that way it's not just something that I'm pitching to you, but it is who I am on the inside.
I'm happy to go. I'm making that face because I help these girls with interview, specifically Megan and Genevieve. So I'm like, oh, I want to hear their answers because they're going to hear me say that it should be every moment of like the day. And when I say that, what I mean is like, I'll tell these girls when they're practicing for interview, I don't care if it's when you're washing your face. I don't care if it's when you're driving in the car on the way to work, you're in the bathroom at work, whatever. You should be living and breathing your oral advocacy efforts, right? So when I was competing in the organization, the way that I did it is I had a list of 100 questions and I audio booked them, right? I recorded a little video and I left 30 seconds in between each question and I would have it on repeat any chance I could. And it's not necessarily that I'm trying to memorize an answer, it's that I'm trying to get good at being able to answer without having to think, right? Because so often we're having those filler words at the beginning. We're repeating questions back in the form of an answer, trying to find the right words to have that story, to have that perspective, to create that connection through our communication. And ultimately, if it's who you are, if it's what you're living and breathing by, you shouldn't have to pause to think about it. And that's one of the things that I look for when I'm interviewing, when I'm talking to people.
I think Caitlin touched on it a bit earlier on the first impression, which I love in her anecdotal story there. But I think when it comes to making the 30-second introduction, meeting a new room, whether it's in pageants or even professionally. The biggest thing that I do when I'm prepping for those meetings is just really understanding what point I want to make and who I want to present myself as. So I think it's really important, not necessarily to script it and write it out word for word, because then I think you're just setting yourself up for failure. And I see this happen a lot where you know, miss one word and then suddenly the whole thing is ruined. So I really love having a couple bullet points of just the points that I want to make, who I am, especially in changing that per room. So who I introduce myself to pageant judges versus my boss at work is going to be very different. So a lot of those skills are transferable, but it's really just learning what room you're in and what's going to be valuable to the people that you're speaking to, and how you can establish yourself as a leader within the room and what qualities you want to bring forward in that sense. So just, I guess, doing a little bit of homework and a little bit of soul searching beforehand, just to really know who you want to present yourself as, so that you can walk in the room and just really be confident and have a point to make it, and just kind of let the conversation go naturally from there.
Okay. Go ahead, Gabby. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say I have nothing to add to that. Ditto, Megan. That was perfect.
That was fantastic. And I'm going to ask one last question. I'm going to walk around and see if there's any questions out here. But the practicing, knowing, feeling confident on what you're going to say, how do you get over the nerves of walking into a room full of strangers? And we talk about networking. If you're going to launch a business, start a business, or even if you start working at a new law firm or at, you know, a new job, how do you walk in that first day, walk around and say, "Hi, I'm Brent Kleinman, nice to meet you"? How do you build that confidence? What have you learned? What skills can you pass on to everybody on how to be self-aware and self-confident when they're walking into strange rooms?
I could tackle that one. Anytime that I notice I am overwhelmingly nervous, it is almost always that I am under-practiced. And not to say that there aren't times that you do have a natural amount of nervousness going into a new situation, but I think back to when I was in 8th grade. I was homeschooled my entire life, and I was starting public school. It was my first year in, and I had a friend who told me, "You're going to be the awkward homeschooler." And so I was so offended by her saying that, and I was convinced I was going to prove her wrong. So when I went into my first day of public school, I made it my mission that I was going to meet every single person I sat down next to. My hands were shaking, I was freaking out, but it was that repetition of doing it every single class that it got better and better. My first period, I was freaking out. I was stumbling over my words. My second period, it got a little bit better. By the end of the day, I could confidently walk up, introduce myself, meet the person next to me. And, you know, I was able to overcome that. And so I would say, anytime that you are feeling overwhelmingly nervous, ask yourself, do I have enough repetitions? And if not, I need to get those. And that can give you the peace of mind that you need to continue showing up until you feel comfortable. And when you do get to that place that you do have enough repetitions, you know, for me in private interview in Miss America, I was still nervous going into the state competition, but I would channel those nerves and I would use that as an opportunity to heighten my awareness and actually lean into that as my superpower, because I was paying more attention because I had nerves. So I think your mindset around nerves needs to change based on the scenario that you're in. Is it lack of repetition, or is it that I need to actually embrace my nerves because it's going to make me more?
I can go next if I can't see the room, so I apologize if somebody was prepped to go, but I completely agree with Gabby. I think that's the answer that nobody really wants to hear, but it unfortunately is the truth of just repetition here, and it just really takes making that first step and just doing it over and over. I know Caitlin, Gabby, Genevieve and I all know how much prep goes into Miss Arizona interviews and pageant interviews. We prep like no tomorrow. There was a time where I was doing 5 or 6 interviews a day, just getting into it and getting used to answering those questions and fielding them. But Rome was not built in a day, let me tell you. When I was 15 years old, I was so terrified. I was in musical theater like my whole life, but I loved it so much because I loved being on a stage and entertaining and leading. But I was so afraid to be myself that I found I could just kind of mask myself behind like a script and a character. So that's initially why I joined Miss America. Part of the reason why was to actually speak on behalf of myself for the first time in front of a room. And that first step, I literally cried in my first interview because I was so scared. I just started crying. Of course, I lost the pageant because I didn't answer like half the questions because I was just standing there crying. But if I wouldn't have taken that first step, I would have never even a little bit had the people skills that I have. I studied communications in college. I graduated from GCU just right down the street. But that's a big reason why I chose my degree, was because I really got in front of people and started to become comfortable with that and just get the repetition to know that it's something I wanted to continue to develop and learn. And it was such a valuable skill in such a small scale that I wanted to be able to amplify that through formal education too. So all that to say, it really just took doing it. And I know specifically within pageant interviews, there came a point in time, and everybody always told me this would come, and I never believed them. And I think it's very transferable to professional interviews and walking into a room and holding your own and meeting new people. But everybody told me there would come a time where it would just be so natural and so easy. And I did not believe them at all, because I would stumble over my words like there was no tomorrow. It was so bad. And sure enough, I just kept going and kept trying and pursuing and meeting new people and putting myself in really uncomfortable situations. And one day, it just clicked. It was just so much easier. And I think it was just finding that confidence and getting that repetition to where eventually it was second nature. And again, I went in the room, I knew who I was presenting myself as, who I needed to meet in the room, like what their values were and what they were looking to get out of the conversation too. And being able to pick up on other people's communication styles was a big thing I learned as well through talking through different people groups. So yeah, unfortunately, I think the repetition really is key.
I will go a little bit more towards the question that Brent asked about, when it's your first day at a new place, right? And you're like, how do I go up to people and talk to them? They all were in your spot once, right? I think that that's the biggest reframing for me that happened as somebody that's like naturally an extrovert, right? And it was like bullied out of her when she was little and then got back to that as an adult. People are going to meet you where you're at, right? They were all that nervous, anxious person on their first day, most likely, unless they started there at the inception of the company, at which point become their friend, be annoying, right? And just make them like you, because they really will if you're just like constantly chit-chatting with them. Don't be afraid to be that extroverted person. Honestly, don't be afraid to be perceived as annoying, because if what you're saying has substance, you're talking to them because you really care, you really have an interest, you really want to get to know them, you want to stay at the company, or you're interviewing and you really want to work there, they're going to really appreciate that. Brent sees it all over my LinkedIn. I talk about how anxiety is my superpower, right? Like I walk into situations like this and like before I'm shaking, and I literally go to court and I advocate in front of judges, right? I'm auditioning for moot court at my school, which is like mock Supreme Court, right? And everybody that I see is like so cool, calm, and collected. And on the outside, I'm literally like shivering in my boots. And people are like, well, but you talk with such ease. And then these people over here who are so cool, calm, and collected are stumbling over their words, or they're stuttering, or they forget what they're saying. And the difference is being able to recognize that energy and stay in your body. These girls have heard me say so many times during interview that I could hear them come out of their body because they stopped answering the question that was being asked. And I'm like, could we bring you back down into our bodies so that we're hearing what we're saying and what we're speaking about, right? And so with that, like translating that into your first day, making actual connections, right? Looking at people in the eye and hearing what they're saying, actually listening, taking that in and responding, versus what I think we've been taught to do. And that's a societal thing, especially since COVID, which is we hear you, we're not taking it in, and we're just gonna say the next thing that we've prepared. So having that genuine communication and connection ability.
Now going back to what Brent said about that first day, this is my first year competing for Miss Arizona, so I'm still in the nervous part of it. I have not had that repetition, and I was nervous to come out today. I've never spoken on a panel. I've never done anything like this. So a big part of it is you are in that room for a reason, and you need to remind yourself that. Why were you asked? Why were you invited? Why are you interviewing? It's because they saw value in you, and there is a reason you are there. So you just need to, once again, embody that. And then going back to the elevator pitch, like I said, I have that on my mirror, but I also have the affirmations reminding me of who I am, because you can let those nerves get a hold of you and that anxiety get a hold of you and tear you down to where you're not taking in what people are saying and answering it wrong or doing that script. But if you know who you are, you know your elevator pitch, and you remind yourself, it's okay to be nervous, you're just there, you care, you have value, you're there for a reason, then you'll be a little bit more comforted as you go on and get to that repetition stage.
Fantastic. Before I ask anyone who has any questions,
Hi, I have 5, but I'm gonna I'm gonna tone it down. So my first question is for Megan. I'm a marketing major here at GCC, and the company you work for, I want to work there too someday. And my first question is, what are the 3 most important marketing skills that a good marketing agent should have that you have learned throughout your career?
That is such a great question, and let me just say we would love to have you. If you do have questions specifically about the company, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram or anything. I'd love to connect on that front. As far as just my marketing career, so this is my 3rd now corporate job post-grad, working in the marketing field, and I have learned way more than I ever thought that I would. I think the biggest skills that I've learned that I use in my day-to-day, first one, it is creativity. I think with marketing, the key is just being different, and just understanding really how can I find value propositions in my company, in my product, in whatever you're marketing for, and how can you convey that value through creative messaging. The second that I think is the most important that I've learned is how to understand target markets and audiences and really using data for decisions too. When I first started my career, I studied communications. So you have the advantage of having the data side of your education too and the financial pieces. And I didn't, and I had to just figure it out. But using data is literally 60% of my day is looking at different spreadsheets and numbers and things for different clients, which I never really would have expected. So making sure that we're making data-driven decisions and really anything, but specifically target market, is really, really important. And then third, I think is just listening, which I know sounds so cliche, but when I speak with clients every single day, I'll ask them a question and then I'll just kind of let them answer. But when it comes to their actual objectives, if I ask, what is your biggest value proposition? Why are you here today? Why are we meeting? Because this is a business consulting agency, right? So learning like their goals within the platform process, which is where I work. So it's essentially just creating a strategy for their business to continue forward. And when we're crafting that strategy, I'll ask them a question, and most of the time when they answer and then they continue talking, we find really the root of what they're actually saying, but it takes them just kind of like going down their own thought path. So from a marketing perspective, if you're working with clients specifically, or even your manager, or really anything that you're marketing for, I think it's really important just to listen and really understand the why behind those decisions too before doing anything else.
That's amazing advice. Thank you. Do I make the other 4? Or?
We'll do the other 4 later. Any other questions out there? Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, for any one of you who has started their own business, what's kind of the main method or tactic or persona that you created in order to get people to trust you as you're starting your business for the very first time?
I'll take that one. So I've started 3 businesses. One is a nonprofit, 2 are for-profit. I sold my first business at age 24. Still have one of those, right? So I think the biggest thing that went into crafting that persona, because I was in high school when I started my first business, and as a high school student, right, you're 16, 17 years old, people are like, oh, you're just a kid, right? Translating that to when I graduated to being an adult, it was getting past that hurdle of people looking at you and saying, you're a young person, how do you know anything about business, right? And thinking about, as crazy as it sounds, all of those what if negative things that people are going to ask you and being able to answer those yourself. So I would have a list of all of the things that I'm like, these are the things I'm really afraid somebody is going to say to me, right? You're too young, you're a girl, this is a weird field, I don't care about what it is that you're doing, why does it matter what you're doing? And weaving those into my narrative and my story, right? Social media is such a big part of what we do nowadays, and that's where you're going to be creating that persona or that brand identity and staying true to that. I think a lot of times we see young entrepreneurs especially see these trends, and it's awesome, and it's important that you're hopping on trends, and I'm sure our lovely marketing ladies can speak to that, right? Trends are important, but they're not important if they go against the core values of who you are. And so before you're ever speaking to somebody about whether it's investing in your business or partnering with them, it's going to be recognizing and figuring out what exactly it is you value and what it really is you want to do behind your business, right? So if it's a for-profit business, my first business I started was a character entertainment company, right? People are like, oh, little princesses and superheroes that go to birthday parties, right? And they think, oh, whatever, that's a non-starter for me. I partnered with Phoenix Children's Hospital at the height of my business. When I sold it, I had 20 independent contractor employees across the entire state of Arizona and had franchised it out. I had created training programs for like businesses in other states that I was then also able to leverage and sell. So something so small that people look at and they're like, well, that doesn't matter. Well, to that child that I was able to have a character go to and speak at Phoenix Children's Hospital, who we would find out, the next month passed away, that really does matter. And that is a story that people want to hear and they want to invest in and they do care about.
Love that. I'm going to kind of twist this a little bit. Y'all have talked about it somewhat. You, in the pageants and in your worlds, have all created brands, and you are an identity, you are a brand. How does social media today play a role in that brand creation, and what warnings can you give or tips to better create your brand on social media? Whoever's brave enough to go first.
I'm happy to be brave enough to go first, but I'm gonna tackle the second half of that question, which are, what should you be mindful of when building your brand? And this is probably the number one miss that I see from most college students. And it is, what you put online can seriously impact your ability to move forward in your career. So when you're building a personal brand, be mindful of how appropriate the content is that you post, how vulgar it might be. And I know it is cool and trendy to post bikini photos and going out to party, but employers really do look at that. Clients look at that. If they're considering working with you, your social media is your digital resume. And I know for a fact that our HR team will go and they will check people's social media before deciding to hire them, because to Megan's point earlier, you are a representation of that brand, even though you have your own personal brand. And so I would say, if you do have content that you feel you need to post, make your social media pages private if it's not appropriate. And if at all possible, I have only ever found that those kinds of posts hurt your brand more than they do help it. So if at all possible, I always recommend steering clear of it.
I can speak to this as well. So previously in my roles, I worked as a social media manager and a digital manager for a little over a year. So this is definitely my MO, and now working with marketing, social media is, of course, a big part of that. So yes, I think that Gabby really hit the nail on the head. Going back to my original point of speaking for the brand too, it's so important that you're kind of weaving those messagings together for whatever brand that you're currently representing. And in your case, I think it's even a representation of your school. When I was working at GCU, I had GCU like in my Instagram bio. I was on student government. I was a vice president. So that was a huge, huge part of who I was. And I had people, I remember so vividly. I was in the airport in Spain. Okay, I was in Madrid and I had my GCU backpack on, and someone stopped me from Texas and recognized it and talked to me about my student government in Spain. So just little things like that go to show that it's so, so important to always make sure that you're representing the brands that you have. But when it comes to crafting a personal brand and kind of tips there, I think the biggest thing that I talk about in my personal brand that I use through pageantry, through just my individual profiles in professional life, but also what I preach to my clients and their businesses, is really just consistency within your brand voice and your core messaging, which I think is really, really important. So of course that core messaging piece is a bit more applicable on the professional brand side, but really just understanding, what is my brand voice? What is the attitude? What is the communication style of the content that I'm putting out there? And I think that's incredibly applicable to your personal brands as well as you continue to build the business. And one thing to consider as you go down the line too, and you're building up these brands as well as your personal brand, is connecting the two. So how can who I am as a business owner and as a professional tie to the businesses that I actually am creating? And how can I position myself strategically as the owner of those businesses too, so that you can tie the messaging together as well, so they can still stand independently, but you can see common themes threaded between. So it should be, a reflection of you, best practices with social media, I think, when you're building up your personal brand, is really just to come up with, I don't want to say pillars for content because that's a bit more on the brand actual side, but just have a certain set of content that you're looking to post to, if whether it's on LinkedIn, really posting about your accomplishments, make sure that you're putting all of the different workshops that you're going to and things. If it's on Instagram, just showing who you are in a fun, insightful way, and just yeah, really just sharing your personality. I think that's your moment to shine and show personality in addition to just your hard skills, soft skills, and experiences, to really show who you are and who they're going to be working with. But as Gabby said, in a way that still reflects the core values of you and your brand. So that is my advice when you go to building and kind of counterbalancing the two together.
I tell you, Megan's got the shortest long answers. But
Sorry.
no, it's wonderful. I love your answers. Here's my next question. I want y'all to put on your forward-looking glasses. Where do you see yourselves in 5 years? And how is the experiences you've had going to help shape that?
I'll go first on this one. So as of right now, I am in the application process for law school. So in 5 years, I will hopefully be holding my Juris Doctor degree. Along with being a female lawyer and leader in the legal environment, I started my nonprofit this year. So hopefully I will be able to fund multiple first-generation female law students for their first year of law school, because if you don't know already, during your first year of law school, you're not supposed to hold a job. So I want to be able to make a legal education more accessible to those who don't have the accessibility prior.
To Genevieve's point, she is correct. You're not supposed to have a job as somebody who has a job. So 5 years from now, obviously, currently I'm a first-year law student. I will be graduated, holding my Juris Doctor, practicing attorney, hopefully either at the firm that I'm currently at or starting my own firm. That's definitely a goal that I have. And once again, Genevieve and I are very aligned. So her scholarship organization is actually one that I myself would like to implement in a law firm setting, right? So being able to take people that are like me, who were a paralegal, right, or were a legal secretary, and be able to uplift them to go through university. I go to one of the most innovative law schools. We were the first full-time online JD program. So I actually go to school at Southwestern Law, which is based in California, and it's amazing. We have students that are in Greece taking law school right now, and it's fully asynchronous. And so being able to leverage that and build a community there. I currently sit on our student admissions board and literally talked to our dean today about how they want me to be able to come back on and also aid in building that community connection aspect, since I'm doing it already as a student. So the big hope is owning a law firm or being at a law firm as a young attorney with a successful book of business, which I can give credit to for being an entrepreneur and doing that already, and then having some sort of administrative role at my law school on top of still doing everything else with all of my businesses, because why not, right?
Ladies, any plan? I know Gabby's going to own half of Maricopa County property-wise in the next 5 years, but what are the goals?
I can go next. So for me, in 5 years, I have a beauty business. I host year-round workshops for She's Got Moxie. I have fully replaced my W-2 income with rental income. And I have kids. I would love to be a mom in 5 years.
I love this. Well, for me, I am in a unique position where I graduated college in 2024. So we were actually just talking about this with my manager of it's been so hard for me to see the future more than a couple years in advance, which I'm sure a lot of you college students are also kind of in the same boat of, up until this point in my life, I was just trying to get through college, get through high school, and then now get my first job. And then after that, it was like, okay, well, now what? Like I did all those short-term goals. So really, what is the long-term goal? So this has been something I've been trying to craft as of late, but I would love to be in a mid to senior level position in my career, whether that's with my current company. Ideally, I would love to move similarly to Gabby into the fashion, beauty, wellness space. It's something I'm super passionate about and have already kind of done a little bit of branding work with. So I would love to eventually move into that vertical. I think in 5 years will hopefully still be in Arizona. financial goal, I want to increase my credit score a lot. So hopefully I'll have great credit. And then personally, I want to be able to travel. So my goal is to, in the next 5 years, make it to 5 new countries. So we'll see how I do.
Okay, y'all are very modest and not sharing everything you do. Between the businesses and nonprofits and passions that all of you have, talk about the building of those businesses, the continued drive, the nonprofit. She's got Moxie. Megan, I know with the American Heart Association, the work you do. Share how you feel those passions outside the workplace, but what they create, what they offer, and why it's so important to do that as well.
First. So I work with nonprofits in every aspect of the field. So I started my first nonprofit at 19. It was called the Emergent Collective. It's no longer in place today just because COVID obviously made a great impact on a lot of nonprofits in getting funding, but we offered assistance to people, to women specifically, that were in transitionary periods of their life. So whether they were just getting out of cancer remission and their body has entirely changed, or they're male to female transgender who is trying to navigate the world in this new body, right? Or a woman who has undergone extreme weight loss surgery and they now don't know how to dress for themselves. And I know that that sounds like such a high level concept, right? Because wardrobe, why does that matter, right? Why does that deserve a nonprofit? But it wasn't just based on wardrobe. We had nutritionists that were helping these women figure out how to take care of themselves and stay healthy. We were working with them in terms of helping them get jobs. We worked with women who were homeless, teenagers who had had babies that were in foster care, which then goes to another nonprofit that I currently am the event coordinator for that provides community events and service to some of Arizona's most vulnerable youth, including children who are in the foster care system currently, mainly teens, specifically teen moms often, and then also kiddos with developmental disabilities that are navigating those systems, right? And giving them the opportunities that we often, from places of privilege, take for granted, whatever that looks like. That intersected with my community service initiative from when I competed, which was all about anti-bullying and suicide prevention and awareness. As somebody that suffered with self-harm, with suicidal ideation, with disordered eating in high school due to bullying, it was really important for me, especially in those early years coming out of high school and moving on from that, to be able to take that and not be a victim in the sense that like it didn't happen to me, because it did, but to be able to ingrain that into a part of my DNA and my core. I created a curriculum that got implemented into the Tempe Union High School District at age 23 to help not students, but teachers and parents and educators with understanding what that looks like on a child level, how to recognize that and how to actually substantively help and navigate that with a child versus what a lot of it is that we do where it's educating kids and hoping that they take that information to heart and know what to do with it, which oftentimes they don't. All of that to say, I think the biggest thing that I can impress on anybody, whether it's somebody who wants to go to law school, who wants to be in business, is to serve, right? You meet so many people that you never would meet walking into a room and saying, I'm here to be a servant leader, which is a term we hear thrown around a lot, right? But it comes into everything that I do. So as a business owner, as a manager, as an employer, I'm going to do the same things that you are. No job is too small or too great for me to do. I will go throw away the garbage if our cleaner is out that day, just like I'm going to be, managing your schedules. That goes back to being able to walk into a room and put yourself in the position that you've never been before, and to have that empathy and to recognize that you're where you're at status-wise, position-wise, because you've put in the work, but that doesn't mean that the work stops. It just means it becomes more profound and you have more of a story that you get to share with everybody that you meet.
The sound cut out for a brief second, but I think the question was, why is this initiative important to you, right?
Pretty much, yeah. What is it about She's Got Moxie and everything you do outside of Cardone that inspires you to do what you do, and where do you want to see that go?
Yeah, I think for me, going back to why I ever made She's Got Moxie. It really started with who I was when I first joined Miss America, because I was just not the human I am today. I was a shell of me. I went to Sephora to learn how to do my makeup. I did not know what garment bags were. There were just so many skills that I didn't have. I grew up in a very small town. And when I moved to Phoenix and I started putting myself in bigger circles, I realized that I was capable of doing what everyone else around me did. The only difference between me and them was that they had more time. And so what I wanted to be able to give young women specifically was the roadmap and the skills that they needed to be able to achieve their goals. And so for me, She's Got Moxie is really everything that I wish I had when I was 18 years old and I was living on my own for the first time. But I mean, it truly is, I think, the most important work that I do in my life. I love my job. But I think to be able to help other women achieve their goals is so fulfilling to me. And so that's really where it all started.
I can go next. So first off, to start, the reason that I even joined Miss America in the first place, part of it was to gain the confidence to be able to walk in a room, but the other part was just to have an outlet to volunteer. I felt like I was so driven to volunteer, and I found myself just reaching for really any opportunity. And I feel like the Miss America organization centralizes it really well because it's such a core of who the organization actually is. Volunteering is such a requirement, but it's just such a core of who Miss America actually is and who our title holders are. So that was kind of the first reason that I wanted to join, but it's just because I love serving and I needed to find an outlet. And when I first started competing, my first service initiative was called A Service Above Self, where I was just going around in my high school and encouraging others to do the same and giving them a platform to volunteer. And that was so fulfilling and actually ended up getting me into college because I was leveraging my experiences there and the networking there to be able to speak to who I was and the fact that I was qualified for a communications degree. But that's besides the point, just a little bit of backstory there. But when I was 10 years old, I was diagnosed with Shiga E. coli, and I was in the hospital for over 2 weeks in the pediatric ICU. And they told my mom to start making arrangements because I was so sick and none of the treatment was helping. Eventually, down the line, I got a blood transfusion that ended up saving my life. It was so insane. It was like a switch that just went off. And I walked out of the hospital totally fine 2 days later and have never looked back. I have no remnants of the illness whatsoever. When I was 3 years old, my father passed away from his battle with leukemia. So kind of in the same vein of blood donations, marrow donations. So in order to fight in his honor and just continue his legacy too, as his only daughter, that's a really big part of who I am and the work that I continue to do. And Miss America gives me a platform for that. But my serve initiative is called Give the Gift of Life, amplifying blood, organ, and marrow donations. So I kind of packaged it all together, and that's kind of my why behind it. But working with Donate Life Arizona, working with Vitalent, the American Red Cross, working with NMDP to really formulate these together and make a difference. It's so fulfilling because it's not only fulfilling my personal passions, but I found something that's literally saving lives. And it's so cool to have been in that position and been a family member of somebody in that position and continue to advocate for it and live on my father's legacy. I feel like use my life for the purpose that I was given to. I mean, I was alive for a reason, and I'm so thankful that moment happened because I think it gave me such a different perspective on life and such a different outlook on volunteering and service work. So my main initiatives, and through the skills that I've learned through speaking, through being able to walk in a room, I advocate in the Arizona State Capitol frequently. One of my biggest goals now is partnering with Donate Life Arizona to really make some changes in legislation in the state as far as organ donation in the DMVs. So there's a lot of work that goes on that is so beyond myself that I wouldn't have been able to have a seat at the table in if I wasn't able to make that first step and initially find an outlet to do the volunteering and the outreach, which is what Miss America gave me, but it can be so many different outlets for so many different people. So just getting involved in organizations, getting involved in things, and just finding your passion project and making a difference with that is why I started it and why I'm still in it.
So back to graduating high school at 16, I went through a lot of familial troubles when I was younger. I was in and out of Child Protective Services and foster care for a lot of it, which eventually ended up with me getting emancipated when I was 16 and having to be independent, despite having my biological mom, who I was lucky enough to be able to live with, But a lot of what I struggled with was when I was 13, I went to the courthouse by myself, begging for them to get me to a safe place. And no one listened to me because it was a 13-year-old girl against her biological parents. I could have just gotten into an argument. They weren't giving me what I wanted, and no one would listen to me. So it took me taking videos of what would happen to me and bringing that to them before they gave me a voice and gave me the chance to say my story and get out of the household and get my siblings out of the household. So then I went to community college. I was lucky enough to be able to move into the dorms after that. And after graduating community college, I went to a larger 4-year university, met with a pre-law advisor, telling her my story, saying I wanted to go into family law and I wanted to eventually go into law school, and asked how to get there. I was a freshman or sophomore, however the transfer system worked. And she basically told me that I was not enough to go to law school. I did not have the ability to go abroad. I did not have any of the accolades that all of the other students would have, and law school took the best of the best. So instead of giving me the steps to get there, she told me that I wasn't going to. And of course this broke my heart. This was my lifelong dream. This was my escape from everything I had been through. So I dropped out of school that year. I took a year off before going to Arizona State University, where I met with a new advisor who didn't tell me that I wasn't enough, but gave me the opportunities to eventually be able to go to law school. So they got me into this program, which was a research project with the embassy in Brazil, and I created the initiative Faça a Diferença, which built sustainable food options for favelas or marginalized communities in different towns in Brazil. I didn't stop it at a research project. I actually went to the president of ASU, who gave me the grant money and flew me to DC to speak to other ambassadors to start a nonprofit where we were able to build community gardens in Arizona and in Brazil and start a comparative research analysis project, which they are still doing at ASU now. But even in that process, I had 2 mentors. One was male, one was female, and the male consistently took the female's ideas and made them his own and then would preach them and then not give her credit. So I watched this happen throughout the entire process, and I had a partner who was male who also, my partner is incredible. He always stood up for me. But the other instructor would take his ideas or take my ideas and say they were his and not give me the credit that I felt I deserved. And throughout the entire process, I didn't have very many female mentors other than the one who let the male instructor walk all over her. So I also worked at a law firm all throughout college and never worked for a female partner until recently. And it was the first female lawyer I'd ever worked for, and she was a partner in the law firm. I thought it was the most incredible thing, and she sadly struggled with mental health issues throughout this last year, and it has really affected the law firm because she didn't have other females around her. I didn't see any other female lawyers lifting her up. So I started the Will Foundation, which makes first-generation female law students, gives them the pathway, gives them the opportunities to go into law school. It doesn't say, hey, you aren't able to do this, you aren't enough to go to law school. It gives them that pathway and gives them those accessibilities that they may need, while also creating a network for current female leaders so that way they can lift each other up and help build each other up, so that way they're not stuck in this position where they're constantly feeling like they're not enough, or their examples are showing them like, hey, maybe this isn't the career field.
Okay. I'm going to go one last round of questions, whoever has some questions, and then we will let you guys give your last little pearls of wisdom. So, here you go, sir.
So my question was like, how do you guys go about finding the network to like start your business company? And like, I don't know, like you were just saying, like going to the president, like I was at ASU this past semester, and I was like so freaking lost about what, like it's, you know, it's so big. Like I feel like there's like so many avenues that you're like, okay, which one do I choose? Like how do I network with people? How do I do X, Y, and Z? You know, like how do I find people to fund this idea, or like someone to just like even talk to about it, you know? And then I don't know if this might be a better one for you, Gabby, but like finding what you're in real estate, right? Or something. Anyway, so like just finding like the capital, like how to get people to like finance your like ideas and that whole, if you get what I'm saying. Yeah.
So touching on your first question, you have to make what you want known. If they don't know what you want, they're not going to be able to help you. You have to not be scared to be like, hey, I want your help financing this. I want you to partner with me. I want to get in contact with the president. I want to get my project to move forward, and this is why. So know what you want, know what you're asking for, and know your why, so that way when they ask you the questions, you're able to back it up. And like I said prior, don't be afraid of them saying no, because that's the worst that'll happen. I could have gone to President Crow and been like, hey, can you help me talk to the ambassador of another country really quick and help me with this project? And if he said no, oh well, I move on, I ask someone else, or I find a new project. But if I didn't ask, the answer would have been no, and the answer was yes. So don't be afraid of saying no, don't be afraid to ask, and know what you want.
Okay, and the question quick to you, Gabby, was, he said, how do you find that original financing when you don't have money to get started to launch? Where do you go? Where do you look? Maybe some tips on that.
Okay. Can I tackle the first two questions too? I have so many thoughts on all of this.
Tackle away.
Okay, so when you're starting something brand new, I think the most important thing is be willing to do the dirty work. To network, like volume is going to be your best friend. Cold calling, going to as many events as possible, getting in industry groups is super helpful. For me, when I was, selling my first tickets for She's Got Moxie, I was sending hundreds of messages a day on social media to be able to reach people. So there is like an element of grind when you're trying to build the brand. And then as for getting the capital, I will say first thing, understand different financing structures, right? Like I didn't understand that DSCR loans existed, which are like an investor friendly loan. So if you can understand what types of financing structures exist in real estate, it's really helpful. I think Pace Morby is a great mentor for that. If you're looking at more commercial properties, Grant Cardone is a great mentor. But there are so many different debt options that you can use. Don't always feel like you need to do everything all cash. There's also seller financing. So quick few call outs on that. And then one other thing I do want to mention on the business front, there's also an option to buy businesses. Absolutely, by all means, you can start something from the ground up, but sometimes buying a business on Biz Buy Sell or there's a million platforms that you can literally go look for businesses that are for sale. It can be a great option. And again, there are plenty of debt structures that you can use to buy that if you don't have the cash on hand.
Okay, super. We're getting close to end of day. So I want to end with this, and Genevieve's going to have the little asterisk here. If you went back to 18-year-old or 16-year-old self and you were starting college all over again, what advice today would you give yourself to do differently? Megan, we'll start with you since you are Miss Glendale. Oh, and there's going to be a blood drive here tomorrow and Wednesday if you want to come to campus.
Was that towards me? I heard Miss Glendale. I did not hear what you said, though. I just heard Miss Glendale.
We're having a blood drive the next 2 days. I know that's important. So if you want to swing by,
Yes,
it's
please send me the
Vitalin, so.
information. I would love to.
All right.
Well, since I'm already chatting, I can answer the question. If I were to go back, so I actually started college at 17, so slight caveat for me too. And tell myself one thing in college, I really think the biggest thing that I started doing after college that everybody else started doing during it was just putting myself in those rooms and networking. And we've talked about it so much today, but really I was so lost on what career I actually wanted to do. And I was so afraid to ask for help and interview people. But one thing I started doing as I was going to decide on what career I was actually going to pursue, because to be quite honest with you, I joined as a communications major. Yes, I wanted to develop communication skills, but I also had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was so up in the air. Like when I was little, I used to tell my mom that I wanted to be a cashier because I thought it was fun to press the buttons on my little toy cashier. So everyone else wanted to be a doctor or a vet or whatever, and I was over here wanting to be a cashier. So not that that's a bad job, it just shouldn't be my life's ambition, right? But nonetheless, going into college, it really was just figuring out what I wanted to do. And I wish that I would have just used my resources and talked to my professors and seen if they had connections or anybody else in the area, gone to like a business club, gone to other things to just explore my options more. It felt so elusive, and I was in college and moving towards a goal that I didn't really know what the goal was. The goal was to graduate. And I had no really plans after that. So I think for me, if I were to go back, it wasn't until probably my junior year that I really started getting serious about building my career. And I got an internship and put myself in those rooms to gain experience. But there's so much experience that's to be had and so much opportunity as a college student because there's so many people that are willing to pour into you and invest in you. If you just ask, like go on LinkedIn, connect with people, see if there's any meetings that you can have because as a college student specifically, you have such a unique opportunity where people just want to teach you. Like you are the next generation of leaders and that you are the next generation of employees eventually. And networking can get you so far. I got my first job just simply through having coffee with somebody because I messaged them on LinkedIn and they agreed to have a 15-minute chat and then offered me a job. So little things like that can just get you so far. But I wish I would have known what direction I wanted my career to go in and I would have kind of picked that at an earlier age, but I was just 17 and didn't really know, but still, I think it would have been really beneficial to do it earlier.
I'll pivot off of what Megan was saying because her messaging actually really aligns with mine in terms of not knowing what you wanted to do. My biggest advice to myself is that you deserve to be here, right? So I shared with you guys a little bit about my story about how I didn't, I was suffering from suicidal ideation. I had attempted suicide multiple times during high school. And so when I finally got to the point of graduation, I genuinely didn't think I was going to be there. I didn't think I was going to walk at graduation. We didn't do grad announcements or anything like that because I genuinely didn't think I would be alive. So when I got to that point and it was like, you're gonna go to college, it was like, well, okay. What for? I don't know. I have no goals. I've never thought this far. I didn't think I would be here. I didn't think I'd make it here. And so to that point, I just tried everything. And then that's become a core part of who I am, right? People look at it and it's like you're in hair and makeup, you're in pageants, you do coaching. I specifically coach a lot of you guys on like politics and current events and educating you on what's going on in the world around you and being a global citizen and being able to speak and advocate on those things, on setting up nonprofits, on creating those brand partnerships. I own businesses. I work in the legal field now. And a lot of those things have intersection points, but they're entirely abstract. And so people look at it and they're like, oh, you just don't know what you want to do. I've made that my brand. I call it being a multi-passionate individual, and people get so tired of hearing me say it, but it's true. And so I think for me, going back to that young self, one, you deserve to be there, but two, don't question your journey, right? I think so often we're telling ourselves that we need to fit the mold of these entrepreneurs, of these people we idolize who have done the things that we want to do or we hope to be able to do one day because they're our goals, right? And there isn't a formula, right? You can do all of the right things that that person says to do, and then you fail. It doesn't work for you. And that doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means it didn't work for you. And to be able to take that and make that your brand, to turn that into a part of your story and let that failure, once again, as I said earlier at the start of this, become your success story. Because failures aren't doors closing, they're just redirections.
Now pivoting, as someone who always knew what I wanted to do, but still had those failures, still had those setbacks, don't be afraid to create your own path. I was wanting more than anything for someone to be like, okay, this is how you get there. Here's step 1, 2, and 3, and you just have to complete them. And of course, when the advisor told me that that was not a possibility for me, I took a step back and I was like, okay, well then I guess I'm just not going to get there. And it took me realizing that, okay, I can pivot, I can go somewhere else, and then it goes back to the soft skills and adaptability. I had to create my own path and forge my own way and find my own connections to be able to get to where I am today and be able to speak in front of you. If I went back and told that advisor half the stuff I've done now, they would not even know the girl they were talking to before. So create your own path. Don't be afraid to be in that room, and don't be afraid to say yes to something you've never done before.
I would also say in the same vein as Genevieve, what advice I'd give myself is that the life you want is what you negotiate for yourself, and you cannot have something if you don't ask for it.
Fantastic. Well, we are right up against 2:30, so on behalf of everyone here, I want to thank Gabby, Megan, Genevieve, Caitlin for taking some time out of your days and inspiring me and hopefully inspiring a room full of students as to what's possible out there. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
And I tried to get a courier to deliver to your businesses and houses these small gifts, but I wasn't able to make that work. So y'all will get them later, but this is for you and for you. And hopefully you guys can stay a minute or two for some questions, if anyone's got some questions. Otherwise, thank you all very much for coming. 3 weeks from Wednesday will be our next event with Credit Union West. If you want one of their bags, they're up front. If you are looking for extra credit, make sure you signed in before you leave so you can get the certificate that will give you the extra credit or credit for being here. Y'all have a wonderful day.